Should have heard that now. We are currently in the pre-cycle activity portion of the 2025 intervening code adoption cycle, which will result in a supplement to the 2025 California Green Building Standards Code. During this part of the rulemaking process, state agencies, such as HCD, gather input from stakeholders on different aspects of the code. Today, there will be 5 topics discussed and covered, and we'll focus on HCD's State Housing Law Program introductions, followed by meeting purpose and format, the ground rules, an overview of approved California Green Building Standard Code amendments that will take effect January 1st, 2026. And lastly, HCD will cover a few draft concepts as part of the current cycle. These concepts are for discussion purposes and may not be included in the 2025 CALGreen supplement. So before we get started, it's important to note with the chaptering of Assembly Bill AB 130, which impacts both intervening and triennial code adoption cycles, HCD's proposals and any future meetings, rulemaking activities may be impacted by this bill. Today's discussions will continue, and all the work conducted today will be preserved for future use if any of HCD's proposals are not pursued during this current cycle. Although HCD is waiting for formal guidance from the Building Standards Commission on the impacts of AB 130, I'll pause here for any initial questions about AB 130, and will do my best to answer them, barring that direction from the Building Standards Commission. So if you'd like to raise your hand, please do so.
Go ahead, Bryce.
I think from the outside, one of the most confusing aspects of the AB 130 is how it affects REACH codes versus the adoption of model codes. Like, what exactly do you believe that HCD has new restrictions on, and what don't you?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Bryce. And again, I'll preface this that we're still waiting on guidance from the Building Standards Commission on the impacts of AB 130. But generally speaking, we're currently in a intervening code adoption cycle. This effort is to result in the supplement to the 2025 code. And so the intervening cycle, as part of AB 130, limits the ability for adoption by the Building Standards Commission to a few key areas: technical clarifying updates that do not materially alter existing code, emergency building standards, any sort of proposals as part of new Part 7, the CALGreen code, errata proposals, and accessibility standards with restrictions, and then some local adoptions. And so because of that, this is impactful to the entire intervening code adoption cycle, which would include CALGreen proposals or other parts of Title 24, again, as it relates to what HCD would be proposing. And we'll have more formal guidance from the Building Standards Commission on the direct impacts, but it would impact CALGreen the same as it would be for other parts of Title 24. Don't see any other hands. So if there are no further questions, Calvin or anyone else, do you see any hands raised?
I do not see any other hands raised at this time, Mitchell.
Thank you. All right, I'll go ahead and turn things over to Tyler Mayo to get started on today's presentation.
Thank you, Mitchell. Good morning, everyone. Today's meeting will focus on the current code adoption cycle and specific sections of the code. It will focus on residential occupancies and will include a time limit for all public comments. When providing comment, please wait for the appropriate agenda item to submit your comment. More information about the commenting process will be provided in a moment. Next slide, please. Today, we are joined with Mitchell Baker, as he mentioned, our Assistant Deputy Director, Emily Hill, our Branch Chief, Jenna Klein, our Housing Regulation Section Chief, myself, I'm the Title 24 Regulations Manager, and Calvin Val, our Regulations Analyst. He will be facilitating today's meeting. Next slide, please. The agenda, which was posted on July 16th, 2025, outlines the format for today's focus group. A link to that agenda is in the chat and can be emailed to you if you email title24@hcd.ca.gov. This is a focus group meeting, not a working group. HCD will be focused on the 4 proposed concepts that will be shared today and ask that you keep your comments focused on those items as they come up in the agenda. All general comments can be emailed to title24@hcd.ca.gov. Next slide, please. We will review the ground rules for the focus group. There will be a 3-minute time limit. We request that you stay muted unless your name is called or when the phone line is open for comments. We request that you keep all comments and discussion related to the agenda items. And if you need technical assistance, please contact our Title 24 email address. And that will be found at the bottom of the screen once we start going into each item. Next slide, please. Please note that the chat is unmonitored and it will not be available after the focus group. The chat cannot be seen by people on the phone. Therefore, if you have a comment, please raise your hand or wait for the phone line to open. Next slide, please. And now that we've gone over the ground rules for the focus group, I'll turn things over to Calvin and he'll walk us through the comments and the hand raise process.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be covering the raised hand function and how phone participants can mute and unmute. For the participants on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature, which can be found under the reactions tab at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Click on the hand icon. You will see your name and picture, if applicable, is outlined in yellow. HCD will create a list of commenters in order of hands raised and will call on participants for comment. I will lower your hand when I call on you. Next slide, please. When I call on you, please state your name, your organization, if applicable. Note which item you are commenting on. You have 3 minutes to comment. Once your 3 minutes is up, you will hear a timer beeping sound, and we will move on to the next participant. As stated, we may mute you after your 3 minutes. After commenting, please mute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon at the bottom left of your screen. For those calling in, once we have completed the list of commenters on Zoom, I will ask if there are any callers who would like to comment. In order to comment, please unmute yourself by hitting *6. Next slide, please. With that said, I'll turn things back over to Tyler.
Thank you, Calvin. So for item 1, which will be covered in the next few slides, I'll be highlighting a few notable amendments from the 2024 triennial code adoption cycle, which resulted in the 2025 CALGreen. And just for reference, the 2025 CALGreen code was published on July 1st of this month, and it will be effective January 1st, 2026. So for the mandatory measures, HCD increased EV charging requirements and separated occupancy type requirements for multifamily buildings, hotels, and motels. HCD clarified that EV charging building standards apply when certain types of parking spaces are provided, including assigned, unassigned, and common use parking. In addition to those amendments, HCD amended EV charging requirements for additions and alterations of parking facilities serving multifamily buildings, hotels, and motels, and we adopted requirements for long-term and short-term bicycle parking serving multifamily dwellings, hotels, and motels. Next slide, please. Continuing with item 1, for the voluntary measures, HCD repealed the Tier 2 requirements and amended Tier 1 measures to require that 100% of parking spaces serving hotels and motels be provided with access to EV charging. 60% of parking spaces require low power level 2 EV receptacles, and 40% of parking spaces are required to be provided with level 2 EV chargers. And that's a quick overview of the amendments that will be effective in the upcoming months. With that said, before we get into the concepts that we have today for the upcoming cycle, we wanted to open it up for the public. So to comment on any potential, if you had any questions on the amendments that will be effective this upcoming year. So I'll turn it over to Calvin to open the floor to any questions.
We will now open this item for comment. As a reminder, there's a 3-minute time limit on comments. Once I call on you, please state your name and organization. Once your 3 minutes is up, you will hear a beeping sound and we'll move on to the next commenter. Does not look like I see any hands up. Oh, got one right now. And looks like we have a representative from NCAC. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Sven Thiessen, the National Charging Access Coalition. Quick question. Could you please explain the direct wiring requirements and what that means, that language in the new upcoming, though it's going to go legal as of January 1st this year?
Yeah, I can jump in here. Yeah, so for the mandatory requirements, each EV charging equipment that's provided, whether it's low power or, well, for low power level 2 EV charging, they must be connected to the unit's panel to provide direct charging for that individual newly constructed dwelling and parking space. So that is proposed as part of this effective January 1st, 2026 package. Thanks, Sven. Appreciate it.
So when you say it's proposed, though, it's actually not proposed. It's what's going to go straight. And I guess I want to get into the designated parking requirements. So the definition of, I can't remember the actual term in that language, but what you mean by designated in there. Because that's when the direct wiring applies. And maybe I guess if we could show that language on the screen, that would be great.
I don't think we're going to be able to show it for accessibility reasons on the screen. We do have the slide deck up with information that we're presenting today. But we're certainly able to provide any clarification, Sven, if you'd like to send a comment to Title 24, or if you have a direct section and reference that you would like to ask your question on, we can better assist in explaining the implications of the proposal that will be effective January 1st.
Okay, I'm not, I'll try, to find that section, but let's carry on.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comment. I got a unnamed Zoom user. If you are ready, go ahead, please. Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, good morning. This is Dwight McCurdy, also from the National Charging Access Coalition. First, I just want to ask a question. We did submit written comments to 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'm ready to review those at the appropriate point in time. I wasn't sure whether this is the right time or whether it would be better under agenda item 4 or agenda item 5.
Good morning, Dwight. It would depend on the comment. I don't have your comment in front of me. If it's applicable to item 4, which I believe item 4 may be our carpet petition. I don't think your comment was in regards to that. It may be item 3, but otherwise, Item 5 today is for any general comments or suggestions. So if it doesn't fit under item 2 or 3, then I would recommend it would go under item 5.
Sorry about that. You're right. I meant item 3, not item 4. Well, let me just offer up an example, and then you can tell me whether I talk about it later or now. We're recommending that instead of for residential, single family, and town 2-family residences, that the requirement be changed from EV capable to EV ready. Is that something that you would like me to discuss now or later?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So we're currently, item number 1 are just notable changes that have already been approved by the Building Standards Commission effective January 1st, 2026. So it doesn't seem to fit in item number 1, which we're currently on. If it's directly related to the sections that are identified in the agenda for items number 2 or 3 or 4, then I would suggest doing it during that. If it does not fit within those sections, so again, the sections for item 2 are mandatory measures, section 4.106.4.1.2, new townhouses and detached unassigned parking. Item number 3 is residential mandatory measures, section 4.106.4.2.2, multifamily dwellings. And number 4 is residential mandatory measures, section 4.408.2, construction waste management plans. If it does not fit in any of those categories, which it sounds like it doesn't, it would be best to bring that up in item number 5, which is public comment feedback on CALGreen proposals.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your comment. Looks like Bryce, we got you up next here. Go ahead. Thank you for your comment.
Okay, I have 2 completely different items regarding this section here. The first is just a comment from the field on how the past codes have worked out. And now I think 6 times I have worked on the plans for adding EV charging to a multifamily building that was pre-wired under the previous code. And that included conduit and actual wires. And in each of those cases, the first thing that we were doing was ripping out those old wires. And the reason is that the gauge or size of those wires no longer matched the project that we were going to do. And I want to use this as a cautionary tale for you guys as regulators, that your ability to predict the future or builders' ability to predict the future is sometimes limited. Sometimes things change by the time the actual project goes. In those cases, the wire was either too big or too small or the wrong type. And we had just had to rip it out. So that was a comment. Just any reaction to that?
Yeah, I do have a quick question, Bryce, on that. So the projects that you're referring to, were these designed to the 2022 code or a prior code, were EV capable or providing panel capacity and a raceway were the requirements? And in those cases, the designer or the builder installed conductors as well. And those conductors were either undersized or oversized and were removed? Or was this after those provisions were in the code to require direct wiring, and that wiring and the receptacle were not what the consumer wanted, and so they were being replaced? Was it one of those two?
All of the, yes, it was both of those, all of the above. And to me, it wasn't that important whether or not the code, I didn't go back to the historic code to determine whether they had to put the conductors in or not, but they were there and we had to take them out.
Yeah, so when it was EV capable, the requirement did not include conductors, just a raceway. So if a builder elected to install conductors or even a receptacle or charger, that would have been done at their own volition in excess of the mandatory requirements. Just timing based upon when projects were designed and actually started being built. It was probably an EV capable scenario, but thanks for the information. We'll take note of that. Appreciate it.
Okay, and then the question, so a confusion comes up under the code cycle that's coming here when you speak about assigned parking and whether that refers to unbundled parking. So if I have an 8-unit apartment building and 8 parking spots, but those parking spots are a separate lease. In other words, I rent an apartment and I rent the parking spots separately. Does that count as assigned parking? And there's a continuum, like I could rent a parking spot for an hour, or I could rent a parking spot for a month, or I could rent a parking spot for a year. And which of those count as assigned parking? So it's an ambiguity in the code that comes up when we're discussing this with owners and whether they come under these direct wiring requirements or not.
Yeah, generally speaking, in response to that, the concept of assigned parking comes down to the original design. And the code says when the dwelling unit or units are provided assigned parking. So at the time a project is proposed to the local enforcing agency, if it identifies that the dwelling units have assigned parking, then that would trigger the requirements for multifamily parking facilities with assigned parking under 4.106.4.2.2. And so,
so I believe that creates a giant hole in that the developer can simply say, oh, well, we have 8 units, we're providing 8 parking spots, but they're not assigned. They're under a separate lease. It's called unbundling, and it's popular. In some cases, the REACH codes require you to unbundle your parking. And then potentially get out of the direct wiring requirement. So was that the legislative intent? And am I correctly identifying the way out?
To start with, it wouldn't be legislative intent. These are regulations in Title 24 that were based upon broad authority granted to HCD. But in those scenarios, if they are not assigned parking spaces as identified during the design process with the local enforcing agency, they would likely fall into the unassigned category, which still triggers EV charging requirements. It wouldn't include the direct wiring that's codified in the code. So it really comes down to that the designer, the developer, and the local enforcement agency to determine what parking is provided. HCD does not control parking. It's a local matter. It's when parking is provided, these prescriptive requirements are triggered.
Okay, then my prediction is that under the rules as written and as you have interpreted them, that the direct wiring requirement will be less frequently used because of developers making that choice to just simply to basically choose. They can choose between direct wiring and the other method, and they will make that choice. And if that's the regulatory choice, that's what's going to happen. I think that'll happen.
Appreciate the feedback. We'll keep monitoring that and receiving information from locals and builders and designers, and monitor that as projects begin.
Thank you for your comment, Bryce. It looks like we do have another hand up from NCAC. Go ahead and lower your hand. Good.
Thank you, because I'm hoping this is a valuable discussion. Again, back to assigned versus unbundled. It seems like, unfortunately, given that interpretation, that condominiums are going to be the primary area where we will have direct unit to parking space meter, because that parking is generally included as part of the purchase, deeded in the lease, in the ownership document as part of the deed. Would you guys agree, or thoughts, comments?
Yeah, thank you for the comments, Ben. Unfortunately, we can't get into the legalities. It's outside of our scope of contracts or agreements that are between a landowner and someone that's purchasing or leasing a condo, that's outside of our scope. We wouldn't be able to opine on the contents of a potential lease agreement or contract. That comes down to a legal question outside of our scope. Thank you.
Looks like I do not see any other hands raised at this time, so we'll go ahead and conclude item number 1. Next slide, please. Excuse me, I spoke too soon. I saw 2 hands fly up there towards the end there. Looks like Bryce, I got you first.
Since we're in a somewhat informal workshop format here, I can say that the condo associations with the deeded parking spaces are among the most challenging to add EV charging. And the reason is that the typical purchase agreement includes the unit plus a particular parking space. And when we go in to try to add EV charging due to the ADA requirements, we often have to shift parking spaces around or add one or shift something, or maybe the electrical panels over there. And that becomes extremely challenging because it involves changing recorded deeds. And just experience from the field for that. And that's why if those are built with their conduit and the raceway right from the start, then we never have to deal with reconfiguring the parking spot. So short goes as long as pre-wiring applies to new HOAs, I think you're in a good position for the future. And right now, the situation is very bad for existing HOAs adding EV charging, largely because of the need to add an ADA spot and then reconfigure parking in a very inflexible legal environment.
Thank you for your comment, Bryce. Before we conclude this item, just want to make sure, White, I just want to make sure if this comment is related to this item or for the upcoming item number 2.
Yeah, this is Dwight McCurdy. So it seems like we jumped into this discussion about assigned versus unassigned. Is this the point at which you want to continue this discussion, or should I defer it to one of the other items?
Yeah, so the discussion's about existing codified effective January 1st provisions. If you're proposing something beyond that, it would be best to wait to the appropriate agenda item.
Okay, I'll wait. Thank you.
All right, now I think we don't have any hands up at this time, so that concludes item number 1. Next slide, please.
All right, so item number 2. Before we get into this item, as previously mentioned earlier, due to AB 130, there's a strong possibility that a few of these concepts may not be included into HCD's building standards package for this upcoming cycle. However, HCD still would like to continue our dialogue with our stakeholders, and we want to take into account any future suggestions or comments. So with that said, for item 2, I'll give a brief overview. The language being discussed is shown on the right-hand side of the screen. The newly proposed language will be underlined. HCD in this concept is proposing to adopt a new section that addresses the current lack of required EV charging access and detached unassigned parking facilities serving townhouse developments. This proposal is in response to stakeholder comments, and it aligns with the state's climate goals by increasing EV charging access and availability for those using detached, assigned, and unassigned parking facilities serving townhouses. This concept provides similar requirements as contained in section 4.106.4.22, which is item 3 on the agenda today. So getting into the item more in depth, for multifamily parking facilities with unassigned parking, this concept includes that 25% of all unassigned parking spaces serving townhouses be provided with level 2 EV chargers. There are two sub-items. Sub-item 1 is in regards to level 2 EV chargers, EV charging connectors requirements. And sub-item 2 is related to ALMS provisions, which has been incorporated as an option to reduce the maximum required electrical capacity to each space served by ALMS. So the ALMS language was coordinated with the California Energy Commission and amended to specify when ALMS serves one EV, it shall deliver a minimum of 6.2 kilowatts and a minimum of 3.1 shall be provided when charging multiple EVs simultaneously. The minimum electrical supply is reduced to 2 kilowatts to each connected and charging vehicle when 8 or more EVs are served by the ALMS. The modifications are intended to support a broader use of ALMS, and it's intended to provide flexibility for builders and developers. And lastly, HCD has carried over an existing exception that applies to parking lifts serving multifamily. This has been included for consistency as it applies to parking lifts serving townhouses. So now with all of that said, I'll turn things over to Calvin to open the floor up for comment.
Thank you, Tyler. We'll open this item for comment. As a reminder, there is a 3-minute time limit on comments. Once I call on you, please state your name and organization. Once your 3 minutes is up, you'll hear a beeping sound and we'll move on to the next commenter. Let's see. Looks like we do have one commenter at this time. Bryce, thank you for your comment. Please speak.
Okay, this is Bryce Nesbitt with EV Plugbox LLC, and consistent with those from the National Charging Access Coalition and EV Charging for All Coalition. I'll have 3 comments here, which you could ask for one by one, or I'll just rattle through them. But number 1 is ALMS. First of all, provisions for ALMS don't belong in a subsection because we don't want any inconsistency between townhouses or condos or apartments. It's all the same thing. The only difference is motels versus residences because of use patterns. So the problem with this provision is that it's measuring the wrong quantity. It's measuring kilowatts. And it is insensitive to dwell time. What's important is that we want vehicles to be full when they're used, and that depends on the dwell time. In a townhouse situation, my goal is to get those vehicles charged when they're needed, not any particular kilowatt hour. So I set those load management settings to generally take advantage of the 8 to 10 hour dwell time where those vehicles are sitting. So I think you really should be moving this section up and rethinking the load management stuff. Second, EV charging for all. Everyone should have access to charging, even if the developer of that town hall decided to use a parking lift. There has been no justification showing that there's an existing hazard with parking lifts, and that decision is made by the developer, not the resident. The resident should not be disadvantaged just because somebody else made a choice to install a particular type of parking lift. And third, EV charging for all. We don't need to break this up into different categories because the principle should be very simple. If you have a parking spot, it should have EV charging. Full stop. So I don't understand why it needs to be broken, and we need to be talking about townhouses separately from any other type of housing. Those are my 3 comments. Thank you, and happy to hear any reaction.
Yeah, thank you, Bryce. Calvin, if you don't mind, just a response to that before we move on to the next commenter. So townhouses, this proposal is to address townhouses because they were a missing type of construct of the residential
You have frozen
mandatory
and your
measures.
audio is
and then
Unhearable.
multifamily hotels and motels. So there's this. HCD folks, can you hear me?
Yeah, Mitchell, maybe just go back from the first response to Bryce and then just go from there again. I think we're good now.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Thumbs
Yes.
up from
We
anyone?
can hear you now.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, so the current construct of the code kind of lumps 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses, and separately multifamily. Missing type of construction for townhouse that is provided unassigned parking. They were kind of a missing type of housing that didn't trigger EV charging for those unassigned parking facilities. So this includes the provisions for townhouses. Hopefully you all can hear me.
Yeah, Mitchell, it's going a little bit in and out at this point right now, making sure we can get you there.
I mean, Tyler, if you can take over for a second, I'll jump out and back in
Yeah, no problem.
to make
In
sure my
regards to,
volume.
yeah, no worries. I know in regards to the ALMS provisions, Bryce, you made a comment about that. I know we have, I believe there may be a representative from CEC in attendance that can speak on behalf of the proposed revisions to the ALMS language. That's an existing section within CALGreen, but we amended it, or we proposed this concept to amend it. So I'm not sure if there's someone from the CEC that's here that would be able to speak on behalf of that proposal.
Yeah, we have electrical engineers and we have Peninsula Clean Energy, which has done an extensive amount of installation of so-called low power L2 in residences. And so we have a lot of history and technology and electrical engineering experience that we can provide to help get this right. And again, it's no different for a townhouse than an apartment.
Hi, Bryce. This is Mike from CEC. Yeah, I didn't quite understand the concern about kilowatts. And so if you can kind of restate that, I think I can maybe address it.
A kilowatt is a measure of instantaneous power. So that's how bright your light bulb is. And kilowatt hours are a measure of how much energy you've used over time. That's what your electric bill would look like. And this doesn't talk about time of day. For example, it is undesirable to charge at 6 p.m. in California because that's when we have the least solar and the highest electric rates. And this provision could be used to say that the ALMS would be required to deliver 6.2 kilowatts all the time. And that's really not desirable. What we probably want to do is deliver less than 6.2 kilowatts until the building load drops at 9 or 10 p.m. and then deliver that higher number through the rest of the day. So I think this provision is very technical. I don't think it belongs under a particular type of facility. And I think it needs some work to understand dwell time and places where people park for a long time. And that load may vary by day from 0 up to potentially higher than 6.2.
Yeah, and I think that's the intent of the 8 or more assigned parking spaces, looking at the diversity of demand. So not everyone's going to park and charge, and there's a minimum maximum of 8 kilowatts. So hopefully that gives the ability to ramp charge when it's needed, take advantage of, if you're stuck at a low power level, you got to charge continuously all the time, even if it's the wrong time of day. And so with this flexibility to go high and low, I think that's what at least the 8 or more assigned spaces is supposed to address. And I'm not sure if that's part of your concern or it's more the 6.2 and 3.1 provision.
Yeah, it's 6.2 and 3.1. So for perspective on older buildings, I go in and I install a sensor, and essentially the EV charging uses all the extra available power at the building. And that means that if everybody turns on their stove at once, the EV charging can ramp down to zero. But it won't do that for long, because eventually somebody's turkey will be done in the oven and that power will return. And I want to make sure that that sort of time of day flexibility still exists, because we can pack a whole lot more EV charging in if we're allowed to ramp all the way to zero at certain times of dynamically based on conditions.
Okay, so maybe more flexibility in ALMS, like building management systems, to take advantage of all the electrical power, inclusive of all the loads. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. I think that the ALMS provision deserves really its own section because it's complex enough, and that we need to have flexibility to do dynamic power allocation based on what else is happening in the building.
Okay, yeah, no, that's all I've got to say about the, that one provision. It sounds like you're looking for like more flexibility, and so I'll just hand it back to HCD.
Yeah, thank you, Michael, for jumping in right there. I'll turn things back over to Calvin to facilitate the hands being raised.
Perfect. Thank you, Bryce, for your comment. Looks like Dwight, I have you up next. Go ahead, lower your hand, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Do you consider a townhouse falling into the category of a single family home or a duplex, or do you consider it falling into the category of a multifamily home?
Yeah, hi, this is Mitchell Baker with HCD. Just want to do a mic check before I start speaking up. Can you all hear me clearly?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Great, fantastic. So under the construct of the CALGreen code, as it relates to the residential occupancies and mandatory measures, townhouses and 1 and 2 family dwellings are lumped together on the provisions, the EV charging provisions. Under the current code, 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses are required to have EV capable. Again, a raceway, panel capacity to support future installation of EV chargers. That's the current requirement for townhouses. They're a separate type of building type. And so this addresses an untapped EV charging building type, townhouses, and folds in the unassigned parking facilities and requires that EV chargers be provided at the same rate that EV chargers are required for multifamily. We're replicating the prescriptive requirements. So townhouses are their own thing when it comes to the application of EV charging requirements in CALGreen.
So I assume then that those under the proposed wording, that those townhouses that do not have in the unassigned do not have the 25% of EV charging stations, that they would all have EV raceways, right?
A general arrangement of townhouses are tuck under parking, a garage underneath the dwellings themselves. And so typically you'll have a garage that's provided with EV capable in a townhouse. That's covered. Access to EV charging is covered there. This would only be the areas that are served as unassigned parking spaces or facilities. And that's where there's a missed opportunity for EV charging. This proposal includes those unassigned parking facilities. So yes, there is EV charging access, generally speaking, with townhouses with attached garages.
Right, and this is speaking to detached, right? So that means that the 75% not covered by the requirement for EV charging stations, the 75% of these detached ones would be EV capable. Is that correct?
No, they're two separate requirements. HCD is not proposing to modify or repeal existing requirements in the code that require townhouses and 1 and 2 family dwellings, single family dwellings, to have EV capable. That still remains. So this only addresses detached unassigned parking because attached parking is already covered.
Well, if you're saying that the only requirement is that 25% of the detached would have EV charging stations and that the 75% that there's no requirement at all, there's no raceway required, it's just 25% of the detached parking spaces get something and then 75% get nothing. Is that it?
No, it's the unique arrangement of townhouses that we're addressing. So typically a townhouse has their own parking provided, tuck under garage, as I explained earlier. So they're already provided with their parking. This is to address the guest or unassigned parking, because generally speaking, when you have townhouses, you wouldn't have additional assigned parking spaces to the dwelling unit. And so this addresses the detached unassigned, which is the typical arrangement when you have a development, a townhouse development. The units have their own parking, garage, access to EV charging. The rest would be unassigned parking spaces. So we're addressing the unassigned parking spaces at the same rate of EV chargers, not EV receptacles, but EV chargers that are applied to multifamily dwellings.
Well, I may not be understanding properly, but it seems like this is a step back from where the current code is, either for single family and duplexes or for multifamily, because in both those cases, 100% get something. And what you're saying here, if I understand correctly, is that 25% get something and 75% do not get something. Is that correct?
No, let me explain this in another way, and we may have to jump off this subject, but I want to explain this in a way that maybe it can be consumed, and let me know if you need additional direct explanation. So if you have a multifamily project under the current requirements of the code, and across the street you have a townhouse development with 3 or more attached townhouses with garages and unassigned parking, that multifamily project would have 100% EV charging essentially. So there would be assigned parking if it's provided, or unassigned parking would have a rate of EV charging. That is currently covered under the code. Today, if you had a townhouse development, each one of those attached garages would have to have EV capable. All of the unassigned parking spaces is not covered. There is no requirement for EV charging for unassigned parking serving townhouses today. This addresses that scenario.
Okay.
To provide EV charging access at a rate of 25% of unassigned parking spaces with full level 2 EV chargers, consistent with what is provided for multifamily.
Okay, I think I get it now. This is similar then to the common space parking requirement for
Yeah,
apartments.
unassigned is what we use, yeah.
Okay, I get it now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your comment, Dwight. Looks like we have Sven next. Go ahead and thank you for your comment.
Mitchell, first an apology. I didn't realize that there was this sort of fourth category of housing. We have single family housing, we have townhouses, and then we have multifamily housing. And I also want to clarify, and I apologize, again, when you said the current requirement is EV capable, when this says the review of CALGreen proposals, is this for the intervening code cycle or what will go legal as of January 1st of this year? What I'm seeing is HCD proposes the following. This is what's going to go legal? Because that's what item 1 was, stuff that's going to go legal. Is this what's going to become required as of January 1st, and this is just for information only, essentially? Or is this what's being looked at in the intervening code cycle?
The latter. This is what we're proposing during the intervening cycle. And again, I know we can't say it enough, but that's notwithstanding the provisions of AB 130.
Yep. Okay.
But this would not be effective January 1st, 2026. It's a proposal during the intervening cycle.
Okay. So the National Charging Access Coalition has not had not properly gone through this proposal because we didn't realize that there was this third category of housing, so to speak, or fourth if you include hotels and motels. But I like that you're addressing it. So we will get back. I think we're going to get back to you with written comments on that. But the idea, what's critical for us, and Bryce said it as well, is that every unit has access to EV-ready charging parking. And so if that townhouse has a garage below, we would want that wiring from that garage below back to that particular unit's meter. Okay, and everybody having that, at least access to one receptacle or charger with the wiring run back to the meter. Second of all, on the exception for parking lifts, we're seeing, for example, San Jose has a reach code that's the third or fourth biggest city in the United States, has a reach code that says parking lifts are not exempted from the requirements for EV charging. And the concern here is because of space constraints and cost, it's not that expensive to put in a parking lift rather than acquiring extra property for a development. And we're in favor of that because that decreases the actual land use for parking. But what we've seen is both San Jose with their reach code and Palo Alto with their reach code. And there are probably other cities with reach codes that have been in existence for some years that they all have requirements for EV charging in parking lifts. So we are not in favor of this exemption anymore. And Bryce Nesbitt has done a lot of research on all of the parking lift manufacturers and found that I think on the order of 80–90% of them are all, fine, we can do it. Not a technological problem. And I'll let Bryce talk to some of that technology if you would please. But that exception, if this what's proposed for the intervening code cycle, then we are, thank you for addressing townhouses. We missed that, and we may want just to make sure we're in alignment, but I think we are. So thank you for that. ALMS, we'll leave off the table right now. Mike Nicholas from the CEC, who worked on the ALMS stuff, if you could put your name in the chat so we could correspond with you directly later, that would be very helpful. But to reiterate, that exemption for parking lifts, we are against it. It's no longer required. Thank you.
Real quick, thank you for the comment, Sven. When it comes to any questions regarding the ALMS, you can send those to Title 24, and we'll coordinate with folks at CEC. Thank you.
Could someone put me in the queue to speak? I don't see how to raise my hand. Apologies. This is Linda Hutchins-Knowles.
Hi, good morning, Linda. We have, as soon as we go through the commenters that have their hands raised, Calvin will defer to every individual that's called in on their phone. So we'll make sure to call you as soon as the hands are done before we close out the item.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you, Sven, for your comment. And it looks like we have Grant. It looks like you're up next.
Hello, I'm Grant Albert from 2050 Partners. I just wanted to bring up a question for this new townhouse proposal. I was wondering if it would be possible to get some sort of diagram to explain the layout so that it's a little easier to understand. I think I get it. It seems like it's a great step forward for townhouse parking, but I think maybe having a visual would be helpful. That's one. And then a second, regarding ALMS, the city of Port Moody in British Columbia has a performance-based ALMS standard. And I think this is similar to what Bryce is talking about, where there's a minimum performance level of 12 kilowatt hours per EVSE over an 8-hour period, which is similar to 2 kilowatts, but allows more flexibility for dropping down to 0 kilowatts. And so that's a possible solution, a performance-based standard instead of a minimum capacity. Thanks.
Grant, thank you for your comment. It looks like Sven, looks like you had another comment here.
So two things is we submitted a letter with 8 points on what should be included in the CALGreen intervening cycle. This is the NCAC. And I also haven't heard, because it's meant to be discussion, it's a workshop. I mean, we're engineers. And so when they say the plane is stuck on the tarmac, we would like to know why. So in our opinion, the plane is stuck on the tarmac with regard to this exemption for areas of parking spaces served by lifts. This was in the, it's going to be mandatory coming up as of January 1st, that exemption. And so we want to understand what research was done, and because we're engineers and scientists, we're logical and reasonable. So we want to understand why. Is it a cost thing? We haven't, and again, I'm hoping Bryce will jump in on this one, but we're also concerned if this is what's coming up, that we are missing out on a couple of things. And that one is single family homes still being EV capable. And we've heard from Bryce that they rip out the EV capable stuff, but they don't rip out the EV ready stuff. And so we're pushing that single family homes be EV ready. There's a huge cost savings here, and it makes it so much easier to get an electric vehicle. But I'm not sure if, because we're only talking about your proposals, that this is the appropriate place to talk about things that should be included. But the first thing I would ask is, tell me about why the plane is stuck on the tarmac with regard to parking lifts. That's an analogy, of course. I hope you get the humor.
Yeah, I can jump in initially here. Thanks for the comment, Sven. So this isn't a new exception. This is an existing exception from cycles back. The two major elements for HCD include, specifically related to CALGreen, ensuring that our proposals are green, cost effective, but we also are required to ensure that there's an element of health and safety with what we propose. So we have an existing exemption for parking lifts that is already in the code, has been in the code for some time. In order for HCD to remove a longstanding exemption, we would need assurance that those that would use a parking lift to charge their vehicles can do so safely. During the last cycle, the Code Advisory Committee recommended that HCD further study. We did further study. We received results from parking manufacturers and others that could not assure HCD health and safety and compliance with existing provisions within CALGreen that require aisles and widths that provide access for individuals that are using EV chargers. So we are not proposing to remove that exemption without additional information that would give HCD the assurance that parking lifts can be constructed, all parking lifts can be constructed with EV chargers, and the users, the consumers, can navigate those EV charging lifts and charge their vehicles. I think I heard you particularly say earlier that 80 to 90% of the manufacturers can do that. We can't just address 80 to 90% of the manufacturers. If we remove an exemption and parking lifts are then permissible to have EV chargers, that would mean that 20% would not be able to accommodate EV chargers safely. So these are the things that HCD considers. Health and safety is critical and important to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. Looks like Bryce, looks like you have a comment here. Your time.
Okay, with regard to ripping out wires, I told you a story about commercial properties. Residential properties are completely different in this regard. One charger, one property, or two chargers, not the same. So that comment was specific to multifamily, where we're talking about putting in arrays of 20 or 30 chargers and find that the wire sizes are just not working out. Second, since parking lifts have now come to the forefront, the parking lift industry is quite firm that they can do it. They can do it safety. They can meet the health, safety, and ADA requirements. In the last cycle, all of these vendors sent you guys a letter saying that this is a solved problem and we can do it. And what I'm hearing from the regulatory side is that because you view that it's not perfect, nobody gets charging. And I think that's the wrong way to go. You're saying that maybe somebody can't access the controls for a charger on a particular vendor's type of lift. So instead, you're going to take EV charging off the table for everybody. That seems like a baby bathwater solution. And that's my comment. And I hope you'll hear more from the parking lift vendors in the future on this issue. You have an industry that wants to be regulated, that wants to be treated like every other type of parking facility, and you're saying that they can't be.
Thank you for your comment, Bryce. It looks like we have Sven. Do you still have another comment regarding this item?
Yeah, it's I want to apologize. I can't help it. I'm an engineer. I fix things. So I'd like to know exactly what this island width concern is, because again, I don't know if anyone's on the phone from San Jose or the city of Palo Alto, any ALJs. We have that as in our reach code. And that's the whole point of reach codes, is to go out and experiment and find out if they work or not. City of San Jose right now is going through their reach code. They're redoing their reach codes, and they are continuing to hold that exemption. And my understanding is because they haven't had any pushback from the manufacturers. In other words, it works. So I'd like to know a little bit more. You talked about aisle widths. If you could talk a little bit more about this concern for safety, and that way maybe the manufacturers who, like Bryce said, have not voiced concern over this could further answer it. Mitchell and HCD, you guys are doing good work here. We're just pushing harder because of this huge climate crisis we're in. And in 2035, all new cars in California are likely going to be sold as electric. And so we need this massive amount of charging infrastructure put in. And for every, I'd like to poll the group now, if there's an EV charger, someone with an EV who doesn't like to charge at home unless it's god-awful expensive, please raise your hand and chime in why. But I would say 99% of us EV drivers, the most convenient, reasonable, safest, cheapest place to charge is at home. And you are denying this to within our high density buildings where we meet multifamily housing, where you're going to put in parking lifts, you're denying them charging. And that is, it sounds like, and as an engineer, we recognize that we're only going to be 80% successful, right? And we should go, 80% is great. So if there's a couple lift companies that have to change their minds or how they do something, that's good. We're pushing the technology. This is what CARB did with catalytic converters on cars in the 70s.
There's 25 seconds.
CARB mandated emission standards that the car companies had to change to meet. So I would encourage you to be bold and strong and strike this exemption.
Mitchell, you're mute.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Just real quick, Calvin, we have a few items where the parking lift exemption exists. So great that we're having this discussion now. What I would recommend, HCD is open-minded and we're willing to accept additional information. We need that information sent to Title 24 at hcd.ca.gov. If anyone has information that can assure HCD that all parking lift manufacturers can provide safe parking lifts that also include EV chargers, please send that information to Title 24 at hcd.ca.gov. we can consume that information and take that into consideration. Dialogue is fantastic, but if you can send that information, it helps with the process. Additionally, there are provisions that exist in the code under section 4.106.4.2.2.1 regarding EVCS spaces with EV chargers installed, dimension and location. And those are existing provisions that require certain lengths and widths provided at EV charging spaces. We need assurance that those provisions can be met at when EV parking lifts are used and EV chargers are provided. So any information, I encourage those on the phone to send that information to Title 24 so we can consume that written information, appreciate the dialogue, but I ask that anyone with information send it to Title 24 at hcd.ca.gov. Thank you.
Okay, before we defer to the next item, oh, looks like, sorry. I see, Sven, you had your hand up. Is this about this item or can we?
It's just a quick question. On the section you mentioned with length, widths of EV charging parking spaces, those requirements don't apply to single family housing or multifamily housing or assigned parking. So I'm confused as to why you're holding parking lists to a different standard than you are I mean, not you personally, obviously, why HCD is holding this particular category to a higher standard than other parking spaces. Just so you know, I've had a dual port curbside charger on the street in front of my house for the last 14 years. We've given away nearly 400,000 miles of driving. It's sort of my wife and I's community service, and no one has ever complained about the size of those parking spaces right there. All I get is letters of thanks and sort of like, wow, this is amazing. Thank you for for enabling me to charge. So can you spend a little bit of time on that, please? And maybe you could tell us those length widths. I don't have it in front of me.
Mitchell, you're mute.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah, so this particular section is not on the docket for amendment by HCD. It's not part of our items today. We have a lot to cover to get through all of the items, but I will mention the section again and the provisions within that section. It applies to EVCS when EVCS is provided. And it specifically identifies that EVS spaces shall be designed to comply with the following. The minimum length of EVCS spaces shall be 18 feet or 5,486 millimeters. The minimum width of each EVCS space shall be 9 feet or 2,743 millimeters. And then there's provisions for 1 in every 25 EVCS spaces to have an 8-foot wide minimum aisle. A 5-foot minimum aisle shall be permitted, provided that the minimum width of the EVCS space is 12 feet. There's surface slope requirements. There's additional pointers to accessibility provisions in Chapter 11A of the California Building Code. And there's a few exceptions. So I think that are the relevant provisions in that section. That still is a requirement that when EVCS is provided, that those particular lengths and widths, the dimensions and locations are accounted for. Thank you.
Just a reminder that you have somebody on the phone waiting to comment on this.
Yes, thank you, Bryce. I was about to get to them next. Just wanted to make sure. Linda, want to make sure, give you your time there if you're ready.
Thank you. Yes, this is Linda Hutchins-Knowles. I'm with the National Charging Access Coalition. I'm also a resident of San Jose, and I did just want to go on the record to make sure it's in the record that San Jose carefully studied this parking lift exemption when they were doing their REACH code, and they decided that they had the evidence that satisfied them that there was plenty of manufacturers that could provide safe EV charging access on mechanical parking lifts. And so they did not include an exemption for that in their REACH code. And so now all the multifamily housing going in San Jose, whether the residents have parking lifts or not, all of those residents are getting EV charging. And that's the standard of equity that I think the state should aspire to. There are examples of cities like San Jose and others that have done this. It's time for the state to do it. And I have to take exception to the statement that you need to have proof that, quote, all parking lift manufacturers can provide EV charging safely. That seems absurd. All you need is to have one holdout to stop everybody else. Like, your job isn't to ensure that parking manufacturers can, or those vendors can have the ability to build. Your job is to ensure that the residents have the ability to charge. And given that at least 80% of the parking lift manufacturers currently provide it, there's plenty of options for builders to choose from. And this kicking the can down the road is really unfortunate when the inequities of driving gas versus driving EVs are accelerating and the climate crisis is accelerating. I don't understand why this wouldn't be taken more seriously and put on your agenda to look at this code cycle, especially because there's not going to be an opportunity for a while to update. So again, please take a look at that. I know that you've had letters from vendors saying we can provide this EV charging capacity on mechanical lifts safely. This is being done around the world. California should be a leader, not a follower. We would just still be following now, but it's time to get with the bandwagon in terms of allowing residents that have no choice, but they're where they live, has mechanical parking lifts, they should be able to charge as well. And if for some reason the parking lift itself can't, they could be required to provide some other access in that building for EV charging, perhaps a few designated stalls that aren't on the parking lifts. There's got to be a way around this. Please apply that engineering mindset, that problem solving, instead of just saying, oh, we can't do it, our hands are tied. Say, how can we do this? How can we meet all of these important needs for safety, for access, for affordability? And I think it is possible. And then I'm going to have to hop off the call. So I just also wanted to reiterate Sven's point about it's time to go to EV ready. I'm sorry. I think it's time, we believe it's time to go to EV ready charging, because that's the standard now for multifamily housing. So residents in 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhomes, homes with attached garages, should also have EV ready charging at the time of construction. The difference in cost to providing EV charging, EV capable and EV ready is very small when you're putting in that charging capacity. But it is a big barrier to residents. I have people asking me a lot, like, I just got an EV, but I don't know how to get charging at my home, or I'm running into permitting problems, or, capacity or whatever. So it's just a barrier that doesn't need to be there. So I hope that you will consider moving everybody in the whole state getting EV ready charging in new construction. We have other comments as well, but I'm not sure if this is the place on the agenda for them. Is this a time to talk about automatic load management systems or not yet?
Linda, really quick, your time is
Please.
up, but if you could wrap up that comment there.
Hi, Linda.
Yeah, that comment's wrapped up. Yeah, just checking when's the time for the automatic load management system comment.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback. If it pertains to this particular item, then it would be here. We also have the ALMS provisions in the next item. If you would like us to close this item out and move on to the next item, we do have the parking lift and the ALMS item being discussed in item number 3. And then also for any single family, or I believe Sven mentioned that there was comments submitted. Those would be, those aren't on the agenda, items 1 through 4. They would be discussed on item 5. So any items that aren't identified in items 1 through 4, any miscellaneous items would be discussed during item 5.
Okay, and I'm calling as a volunteer, not for work, and I have to get back to work. My comment is about ALMS. If that's the next item on the agenda, could I just put my comment in now? Is that possible? Are you moving on to that item now?
We're moving on to section 4.106.4.2.2. Yes, I'll provide an overview, and then if you'd like to provide your comment on the ALMS provisions, then we can start with you if that works.
Thank you. Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you guys, and thank you. We'll wrap up item number 2, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item. So, next slide, and I'll pass things over to Tyler.
Yeah, so for item number 3, similar to item number 2, the proposed concept is shown on the right-hand side of the screen and underlined. The language being removed is shown in strikeout. The same language was discussed previously, as we mentioned. However, we would still like to solicit feedback as it does apply to another section within CALGreen. For those who may be joining the meeting and missed the explanation in item 2, I'll go ahead and recap the parking lift exception and the ALMS provisions. In this item, HCD is proposing to add an existing exception for parking facilities served by parking lifts to subsection 2A. During the 2022 intervening code adoption cycle, the approved exception language was added to section 4.106.4.2.2. This amendment is code cleanup, and it's intended to provide clarity to the code user. As discussed previously, but I will quickly go over it again. The ALMS provisions for those who may be hopping on right now during this item, the proposal was coordinated between the California Energy Commission and the California Building Standards Commission. HCD is proposing to amend the existing ALMS provisions based on the number of EVs served. So when ALMS serves one EV, it shall deliver a minimum of 6.2 kilowatts and a minimum of 3.1 kilowatts shall be provided when charging multiple EVs. The electrical supply is reduced to 2 kilowatts to each connected and charging vehicle when 8 or more EVs are served by the ALMS. This is due to load diversity. Not all EV drivers charge simultaneously, long dwell times, and ALMS technology. A driver's EV charging experience will not be significantly impacted by the proposed changes by charging electrical supply. And these amendments are intended to support the broader use of ALMS and provides flexibility for the builders and developers. So with that said, I'll turn things over to Calvin to open it up for comments. And Calvin, we can go ahead and begin with Linda.
Perfect. Thank you, Tyler. And just as a quick reminder, we will now open this item for comment. As a reminder, there is a 3-minute time limit on comments. Once I call on you, please state your name and organization. Once your 3 minutes is up, you will hear a beeping sound, and we'll move on to the next commenter. As mentioned, we'll go ahead and start with you, Linda, so we can be respectful of your time. If you're ready to go ahead.
Thank you, and I'll keep this very brief as well. I'm with the National Charging Access Coalition, and we believe that it's possible and would be better to reduce the ALMS minimum simultaneous power required for multifamily housing from the current 3.3 kilowatt rating to only 1.6 kilowatts. And this will enable additional charging spaces to be simultaneously served and reduce the need for expensive electric service infrastructure improvements while not sacrificing the customer's charging needs. And I'm sure other people, part of the coalition, will have further details, but I just wanted to put that on the record that we think that you're requiring more power than is actually needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for your comment. Let's see if there's any other hands up. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Sven. Is your time there?
Hey, HCD, thank you guys. First of all, this is hard, it's technical, and not all of you are electric car drivers. Not all of you have talked to people who live in apartments and condos about how hard it is to get EV charging. So first, on the exception, I'm confused as to why this definition of parking lifts is different than the prior definition on the slide we just saw. And so that's again, and we don't want it because again, that the one prior applied to townhouses. This one applies to multifamily housing. Again, just like Linda just said, I would love for you guys 2 blocks away from my house. No, 4. We can go down and tour an apartment complex with parking lifts and EV charging. And I'm pretty sure I can get you guys a tour of that facility to understand that they do work. So I would like to do that, to point that out. And again, for everything that Linda said about lifts and about San Jose and about Palo Alto. I have a question. Do you guys have a reach code chart, I would assume, that documents what cities have done what with regard to EV charging? And it would be interesting to see who had removed these exemptions and talk to their ALJs if there has been any problems. So again, we don't understand this. We're pushing back hard on these exemptions here. And again, it's confusing why the language is different from the prior requirement for townhouses. On the ALMS, I'm going to reiterate what Linda said, but we're, yeah, and I would really like for us to be able to talk technical with the member, directly with the member of the CEC, and actually have a conversation rather than a sort of something done via comment. I think that would be a lot faster. Thank you.
Yeah, real quick. Thank you for the comments, Finn. As it relates to the exception language for parking lefts, it should be identical to existing codified language. We'll verify that it's identical. There should be no difference in that language. So we'll take a look and make sure that it's identical. And then if you have questions and our partners at CEC are here and still available to answer, certainly you can bring up those questions here. What I'm trying to avoid is direct conversations that exclude HCD, since this is HCD's proposal ultimately. So if you have written questions or offline conversations, those should be funneled through the Title 24 inbox so that we can coordinate any responses to questions that may come in. But now is a great opportunity to ask those questions if our partners from CEC are still here.
So I can address the 1.4 versus 2.0. So yeah, we ran the numbers, and or I think you said maybe 1.6. Yeah, the numbers work out at roughly around 1.6, looking at home charging, providing full charging for a typical vehicle. And then we looked at what happens if the efficiency of vehicles changes. So it's a little bit of a worst case scenario. And it's meant to provide a little bit of extra assurance. So if you do go below, I think 3.3 is, low power level 2 outlet is kind of what we're trying to provide the flexibility for. So yeah, I think maybe you're right. Technically it could go lower, but 2.0 was kind of a little bit more conservative look at that. And back to you. If there's any response to that, I can happy to have a conversation. And then yeah, send your questions through HCD. I'm happy to respond in any way possible, because I have done kind of a technical look at it. I looked at it from a lot of different perspectives. Probably too much for right here, but I love talking numbers. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. And real quick, just to point out, these existing provisions don't mandate ALMS. It's just provisions that would kick in if ALMS is provided to reduce the maximum required electric capacity to each space served by ALMS. So just want to make sure that that's clear, that this isn't a mandatory ALMS requirement. This is just provisions in the event that ALMS is used. Really appreciate the comments from Michael and the CEC.
All right. Thank you, Mitchell. And we'll go ahead and move on to our next person. Looks like Bryce, I got you up next here. Go ahead.
Okay, great. First, I saw Michael Jones on the Zoom list here, and if you, he is a representative of the parking lift industry and could speak more directly to the issue of parking lift safety. He just texted me to say that he would be available in about half an hour. If you could accept his comment at that time, do you think that would be possible?
Yeah, if the individual you're speaking about would like to comment during item number 5, that's kind of when we have the floor for any stakeholders that want to provide feedback. He can provide it then, if that works.
We'll see when we can get him. Moving on to my own comment then. So regarding ALMS, So we have reams of data on this. There's a working group called POWER, the Panel Optimization Work Group, which successfully petitioned the National Electric Code process in order to change the formulas for calculating load. Why? Because people would go in to add EV charging or a heat pump or a water heater or all three and say, oh my God, this electrical panel can't handle that load. Well, it turns out that those formulas were wrong and missed the opportunity to use ALMS. And that got fixed at the national level. But here we have an ALMS provision that is not yet electrically complete. When you're using ALMS, you want to be sensitive to the load of the building. We have the load of the grid, which should reflect in pricing. We have the load of the building, which is a local thing. So particularly for multifamily buildings, the peak is in the evening, between 4 and 6 p.m. or so, when everyone comes home, turns on lights, turns on a heater, heats up the apartment that's been cold all day, and starts cooking a turkey or whatever. And those are the periods when we do not have capacity in the building. But averaged over the day and the night, we have plenty of capacity. And so when I design electric vehicle ALMS systems for apartments, I assume that there will be as little as 0 kilowatts available during those building peak times. And they also happen to be really terrible times to charge a vehicle because of cost. So it all kind of works out. So I think there's some more technical work to get this important ALMS provision to say the right thing.
Hey, Bryce,
so that when
15 seconds.
So that when we optionally install ALMS, we are not hamstrung by code. If this code is mandating something, great. But right now, this code is hamstrunging something. It's a barrier to adoption of ALMS, not a way to encourage ALMS. Let's fix it. We've got all the data. Thank you.
Thank you for comment, Bryce. Let's see, Christian, I have you up next. If you're ready, it's your time here.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Christian Corby, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director at the California Electric Transportation Coalition. And I wanted to voice my support for lowering the minimum allowable power level to 1.6 as well. I think the previous commenters have already summarized the benefits of it really well, but just quickly, it allows these ALMS systems to function more optimally and charge more vehicles faster, because they can drop down to 1.6 when there is only that limited amount of power available. So yes, definitely support for lowering that minimum. And then also, I'd like to say that CalGC also supports removing the exception for parking lifts. It appears that there's plenty of companies now that can provide charging at lifts, and that this exception is no longer needed. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Perfect. Thank you, Christian. Thank you for your comment. Let's see, Dwight, looks like you're up next there if you're ready.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just want to piggyback on Sven's comment that somehow we'd be able to discuss directly how calculations are made. We're supporting the 1.6 kilowatt target minimum for ALMS. It would be really interesting to see how the 2.0 was derived, and to engage in some discussion around that. And if that's done informally on a separate occasion, that'd be great and helpful. So we do, so the National Charging Access Coalition does support the 1.6 kilowatt minimum for ALMS. I think that's it. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dwight, for your comment. And looks like Sven, looks like you have another comment here potentially.
On the ALMS, I want to make sure I understand properly. So in multifamily dwellings right now, the current power requirements for dedicated parking is 240 volt, low power level 2, 20 amp circuit. So the maximum required is only 3.2, 3.1 kW wiring wise. Under the ALMS requirements, all the wiring under any system has to be 40 amps because it's got to deliver the 6.2 kWs. So am I correct there? So any ALMS system, all the wiring from wherever the main panel's coming, where the wiring's coming from, has to all serve 40 amps. Then, because if it's serving one EV on that ALMS system, it has to be able to receive that 6.2 kW. And then if you have 8 to say 12 ports, all the 12 ports shall deliver 3.1 kW, which is low power level 2, because I all have to, but then, so I don't really understand, and call me foolish, it's okay. My wife has called me worse. Why ALMS serving 8 or more assigned parts shall have sufficient capacity to deliver at least 2.0 when the sentence above it says, shall deliver 3.1 while simultaneously charging multiple EVs. Shouldn't that be while simultaneously charging 7 or less EVs? I'm confused on that sentence, and I apologize, but I'll be honest. This really isn't giving this this may sound crazy, but the National Charging Access Coalition is actually for limiting power because this saves the builder money and allows more electricity elsewhere in the grid, and hopefully to be able to charge more parking spaces. So yes, we're looking at reducing power requirements. And because we know these things because we're EV drivers, that it still will work. So anyway, I'm a bit confused there.
I don't know if that's questions for me, but yeah, it could say 7 or fewer. That's exactly what it means. And unless you have, yes, and I think every wiring has to be able to supply up to 6.2, and that's, you have to have the upside to actually get the performance. It can't just be stuck at 2, because the whole idea is with the diversity of load, you're actually likely to get closer to 6 than 2. Looking at different arrival times, different parking schedule, different use patterns. So I'm not sure if you're saying that that's a good or bad thing to have the 6.2 is the high side, and I think it actually should go a little higher, or it could go a little higher. But yeah, there's some extra wiring costs there, but it's supposed to address the transformer and again the number of spaces that you can serve on a circuit. So yeah, lowering it to 1.6, it would increase the number of spaces served even more. But yeah, the idea is this is the proposal. It's like 2, again, conservative. It was looking at F-150 driving 16,000 miles or something like that. I can go into the numbers, but kind of an edge case. But yeah, it's a little bit conservative.
Yeah, I guess I would only if you're I can understand that on the 6.2, 16,000 miles in California is again, you're on probably 2 standard deviations away from the average, but you're being conservative. I would only, if you're not willing to change any of the actual numbers in here, I would, for clarity's sake, I would certainly ask and shall deliver a minute 3.1 K while simultaneously charging 7 or less EVs. And then serving 8 or more, then you have that language, because that was not clear to me at all. And again, we would be, like I said, move it down to 1.2, because with 2 kW, is that 240 volt times, what's that, 15 amps? No, that's wrong. Now what breaker size would you
yeah,
look
it's an 80 amp breaker, so 10 amps per vehicle at 208.
Okay,
So it's a little bit more than 2.0. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I think,
But
sorry,
the
go
problem
ahead.
is, yeah, no, it's just hard because not all multifamily housing use 3-phase for the 208 volts versus 240. And I'm thinking about individual breakers and new NEC code with line of sight and things like that. So there's going to be complications here, and bring it down to 6 actually helps in terms of breakers and things like that. But I'd rather an electrical engineer spoke to this rather than my own experience in the field.
Like I said, nominally, it's taking a 80 amp circuit, splitting 8 ways, 10 amps per vehicle, 2.1 kilowatts. So that's one possible topology, but it's not specified because there's a lot of different ways you can do it.
Definitely agreed there.
All right, thank you for your clarification, Michael, and thank you, Sven, for your comment. Looks like we don't have any other hands raised at this time. Is there anyone that is on the phone that would like to speak? Calling in. All right, I think that concludes this item. We'll go ahead and pass things back over to Tyler.
Thanks, Calvin. For item number 4, the proposal is shown on the right-hand side of the screen and underlined. The proposed amendment is in response to petition P124 that was submitted by Carpet America Recovery Effort, CARE. HCD is proposing to amend this section to provide the code user with access to information located on CalRecycle's webpage for the preparing and diverting of waste materials. This amendment is in the form of an informational note. With that said, if Thomas or Robert are in attendance today, I'd like to turn things over to either one of you or both of you, if you can please speak a little bit on behalf of the CARE proposal.
Sure. Thank you, Tyler. Thomas Coates here, the California Program Director, along with Rob Thies. I'm not sure if he's on the call, but I can speak to this item. CARE is petitioning to have carpet, in particular post-consumer carpet, identified and separated from other C&D materials. And the goal is to let those who are in the replacement of carpet, demolition of buildings, understand that carpet is recyclable, and there are outlets to collect carpet for processing, recycling, and reuse of carpet. So that's what I will add with respect to our proposal today.
Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate the background on the proposal. Calvin, I don't know if you want to open this item up for comment.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Thomas. And see, so we will now open this item for comment. As a reminder, there's a 3-minute time limit on comments. Once I call on you, please state your name and organization. Once your 3 minutes is up, you will hear a beeping sound and we'll move on to the next commenter. Let's see, it does look like I have one here, and I believe Bryce, if you have a comment for this.
Okay, this is Bryce Nesbitt, and at the moment I will speak as obviously technical inspections. I am an inspector and I inspect job sites in progress and renovations, illegal construction and such. So quite familiar with Green Halo and waste management plans. First, a process note. So you say in your agenda that this is due to petition 0125. And as a member of the public, I would appreciate if the agenda then would include a copy of petition 0125 so that all of us can come to the meeting prepared. I would have happily read petition 0125, but it doesn't seem to be available anyway. So is that actual petition available, and how could we get it?
Yeah, real quick, thank you for the comment, Bryce. I know you've already reached out to HCD seeking that, and you submitted a Public Records Act request for that. That's an appropriate way to receive that. However, HCD is here today to talk about it, and the petition number is petition 01-24. Sorry, there's a typo on the screen there, but that petition is up for discussion today. The petitioner just spoke about the intent. This is an informational note just to redirect folks to CalRecycle. We're happy to answer any questions. We have the folks that petitioned HCD here for that reason, and we're happy to answer any questions. Beyond that, if you're seeking a copy of that petition, you're welcome to continue in the process of the Public Records Act request for that documentation. Thank you.
Okay, fine. I will move on to the contents of the proposal. I think it's excellent to provide information, and that awareness is the biggest issue. That at a job site, all this stuff tends to be thrown into one big pile and then damaged. So you get drywall dust on the carpet, and it's no longer as good to be recycled, et cetera, et cetera. It is fragile to put a URL or a website address into a regulatory document like code. Quite often, when I have encountered one of those in the wild in a code and followed it, I find that it no longer works because the other side of the transaction changed that particular website address. So that's a problem, and maybe it'll get better over time. But I think this is awareness, and that the main thing is awareness, and that the best place to do that is at the time that the builder is taking out the permit, to make sure that they're looking at a checklist that includes the recyclability of carpet, and that deeply buried in the code is a difficult place for that. But in general, I support the idea of trying to make builders and demolition contractors aware of the recyclability of carpet, and that the right time to do that is right when they're preparing their waste management plan and pulling their permits. So generally supportive here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for your comment, Bryce. Looks like at this moment, I do not have any other hands raised. I'll give anyone the opportunity that's calling in if they have would like to speak. All right. Well, it looks like that concludes item number 4. I'll go ahead and pass things back on over to Tyler here.
Thank you, Calvin. So this item in particular is the one that I think a lot of the individuals that spoke today, this would be your opportunity to speak. So for item number 5, we wanted to open the floor to any suggestions or feedback on CALGreen regulations that were not discussed today in items 1 through 4. Any discussions provided today may be incorporated into future code adoption cycles. Obviously, that is contingent upon the impacts of AB 130, as we mentioned previously. With that said, I'll turn things over to Calvin to begin discussion on this item.
Perfect. Thank you, Tyler. And just as a quick reminder, there's a 3-minute time limit on comments. Once I call on you, please state your name and organization. Once your 3 minutes is up, you will hear a beeping sound and we'll move on to the next commenter. We'll go ahead and see if we have any hands raised. It looks like Grant. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Hi, Grant Alpert, 2050 Partners. We are planning to submit a petition to incorporate 2 items into the 2025 intervening code cycle. The first is a DC fast charger minimum kilowatt capacity definition. Currently, there's only reference to DC fast charging, but not an actual number as the minimum capacity of those chargers. So we wanted to suggest 40 kilowatts as the minimum number. This is after discussion with charging manufacturers and research into the market to make sure that people wouldn't be confused when they pull up to a DC fast charger and it's maybe only 20 kilowatts, which would be disappointing. So yeah, 40 kilowatts is what we're going to suggest through the petition process. But I wanted to bring it to the group. And then the second one is the socket outlet EVSE, which I think will be much less likely to get through with AB 130, but the idea is socket outlet charging or bring your own cable or infrastructure charging, which is common in Europe for level 2 public charging, which allows level 2 charging in places that don't have the room for a typical EVSE. But we wanted to petition to add that as a definition for a possible EV charging connector for installations in multifamily or non-residential parking. So just wanted to bring those items forward for feedback or for future possibility with the people in this group. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Grant, for your comment. Let's see, Gary, looks like you had your hand up. The floor is yours.
Okay, yes, thank you. All right, I'm Gary Gluck. I'm with Siemens. With these 3 minutes, I want to introduce everyone to Siemens in-hab PowerMod as the right solution when 100% of parking spaces in a multifamily dwelling need to be EV ready. Before I go any further, I need to cover a few basic ground rules. This solution is for new construction only. It is specifically designed for apartments built directly by the utility as opposed to some apartments that get built from third parties. Furthermore, it is best suited for low-rise podium-style and garden-style apartments where the parking area and the utility metering are in reasonably close proximity to each other. And for that reason, it probably isn't the best solution for high-rise residential. We will start shipping the product early next year. However, we can start talking about how to design your building using in-hab PowerMod right now. Remarkably, the engineers at Siemens have come up with a solution that provides every stakeholder with an improved outcome over the status quo. For the developer, it's all about cost savings. With in-hab PowerMod, the upfront costs are a fraction of what one is currently paying, and this is due to several factors. The solution moves the EV charging from the house service to the tenant service. The National Electric Code rewards this with a generous reduction in the load calculations. Smaller loads translate into big savings. In-hab PowerMod is also made in the United States, so if there are projects that require domestic content, look no further. For the architect, in-hab PowerMod will almost certainly take up less floor space than how things are done today. The house service is reduced due to the migration of the EV loads to the tenant service, and for the most part, the physical size of the tenant service remains unchanged. What you can't see is that there is an asterisk. There may be conditions unrelated to the EV chargers that may increase some of the dimensions. For the electrical engineer, the prospect of needing thousands of amps to cover the EV loads is a thing of the past. For example, with a 50-unit apartment, the added load will amount to as little as 173 amps. For the general contractor, especially the ones who become early adopters to in-hab PowerMod, enjoy the cost-saving advantage this solution affords. Furthermore, the solution is scalable. It is just as cost-effective to build a 300-unit as it is to an apartment with only 3 units. For the electrical contractor, the solution is part of Siemens BIM Power program, meaning easy integration into Revit. For projects where EV capable is required, all one has to do is run PVC in the ground to the parking space. Done. For the utility, the solution requires no pre-certification. The breakthrough Siemens made did not affect the meter socket design, nor is it counter to any published standards. What is
Hey,
really
Gary.
revolutionary is, I'm sorry?
15 seconds, if you
Okay,
could.
perfect. Saving the best for last, the tenant. Each tenant will have his own assigned space with their own charger. They will be purchasing your electricity from the utility and enjoying the same charging experience as a homeowner. If you're ready to learn about what this solution is, my email address is gary.gluck@siemens.com. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gary. Thank you for your comment. Let's see. Looks like I have Christian here. Christian, your floor is yours.
Yes, hello again. Christian Corby with CalITC. I just wanted to say that we also recommend including the SAE J3400 or J3068 AC universal socket outlet as an approved receptacle in the code. This universal socket outlet enables the bring your own charger, or bring your own cable, BYOC technology, which has reduced cord theft and vandalism, and it can improve safety because it has the J3400 or J1772 connector on the vehicle end and an IEEE Type 2 connector on the receptacle end. So just wanted to make that recommendation. And then we agree that the code could go further for single family homes and go beyond EV capable. But I think CalITC, at least at this point, is concerned that going all the way to install the charger in single family homes might just be a step too far, given the differences in connector types that still exist in the market. So we're actually recommending a kind of EV ready light version, which would include wires that would terminate in a junction box in the garage. So then the new owner could come in and purchase a charger and have it installed, and it would be the charger of their choosing. So we think it could go further with including wiring, but just have it terminate in a junction box. So that's those are the two other additional recommendations for your consideration. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Christian. Thank you for your comment. Let's see, looks like Michelle, you have your hand raised if you're ready.
Hi, this is Michelle Pierce with the National Charging Access Coalition. I just want to, I don't have anything earth-shattering to say. I just wanted to put my 3 minutes in that how important this discussion is in access to electric vehicle charging for everybody. I have lived in multifamily dwellings now since 2019, and access to charging is one of my biggest problems. It just doesn't exist in existing multifamily dwellings. And even when it does exist, like I experienced in 2019, it didn't work and nobody was willing to fix it. So I just want to say how important this topic is, and no one should be denied the access to charge at home. It's the only way electric vehicle adoption will happen. I meet a lot of people at different events that I work at, and the number one comment for why they're not interested in buying an EV right now is they cannot charge at home. You know, I don't know how else to say it, but please do not minimize the importance of how important the topic of being able to charge at home is. I'm a senior citizen, so I have more time. I work part-time, so I have more time to go to DC fast charging stations. But most people with small children, what do? You know, kids won't sit in the car that long. When I've taken my grandkids and we have to charge on the road, I have to go to a spot where there's something to do when I do the DC fast charging. Charging at home is the critical step for the adoption of clean transportation, for clean air, for holding back on climate change. Please, please don't forget how important this topic is. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Michelle. Let's see, looks like Dwight, I got you up next here. Your floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Just a quick comment about the 40 kilowatt minimum for DC fast charging. I don't think it would be wise. Several of the dealerships that I've been at use the 25 kilowatt DC fast charging station. And personally, I think it's an unexplored area. I don't think there's a need to establish a minimum, but I do think there's a need for labeling or signage that clearly states what the capacity is of the DC fast charging station. So just quick position on that. But my real comments for the National Charging Access Coalition are around really the EV ready. EV capable was a great step at the time, but what we really need now for a single family and duplex homes is to move straight to EV ready, where we have the conduit and an outlet. The person can take their convenience cord set out of their trunk, or they can buy one for a very reasonable price and plug into the EV ready socket, and away they go. The cost of the wire is not minimal. Is fairly minimal at the time when the building is being newly constructed. You've got the workers there, the walls are open, super easy to install the Romex at that time from wherever the panel is to the place in the garage or the place in the driveway where the charging would take place. That's the time to do it rather than potentially an expensive, $1,500, $2,000, whatever it may be, retrofit that takes place later. It's just so easy up front with everything open, with the walls open and the electricians are there and they're running their Romex throughout the house. Anyhow, they've got big bundles of wire on them. Just do it at that time. That's the most sensible time to do it is at the point of construction. So EV ready for single family and duplexes. Certainly, I agree with the comments from Bryce and Sven about the parking lifts. The industry is far enough along that it should be just jumped on and accepted. Linda pointed that out. We do think that the definition of assigned parking should be somehow changed a little bit to enable designers, developers, and building officials to equitably apply the requirements during the planning and permitting phase of a project. There should be ways to supplement this so that wiring requirements apply not just to permanently assigned parking spaces, but also to sequentially assigned parking spaces that may be assigned to different people over time living in an apartment complex. There are different technologies available now. There's I forget the name of it.
Hey, Dwight, we have about 15 seconds left.
Okay. Not only Gary Siemens, the Siemens technology you're talking about, there's another outlet technology. There are ways to deal with this now, and I think the wording should be moved in that direction. And of course, we're in favor of the 1.6 kilowatt minimum. You can always do more, but we're in favor of that. So that would conclude the majority of my comments. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for your comment, Dwight. And see, with that said, looks like I got Bryce. If you're ready, you can go ahead.
Okay, so there are several techniques that are awfully useful to use that are not necessarily mentioned in the code yet. I've installed a couple of combination NEMA 615 and 620 outlets. That lets anyone with a convenience cord plug in and charge slowly, trickle charging. Or if they have a more capable NEMA 620 charger, they can charge quite a bit faster. All that on a very minimal electric circuit. It's really a great technique. What I don't like is putting in a electric vehicle charging, an EVSE with a cord that I know won't be used for some years. Because stuff that's not used isn't really respected. It's going to be damaged, cut, broken, cut by the gardeners, left dusty, or whatever. I would much rather install a socket, such as the bring your own cord sockets. And the problem with specifying J1772 or J3400 is that that doesn't include that BYO socket. I think this is a case where you don't need a regulation, where I think that the market can control, and the market will in some cases choose that socket. I think that should be a completely valid option. Second, got to say parking lifts again, because if we're talking from an equity lens, as we should be and normally are in California, we want charging for everybody. And you're defining that some people, through a choice they did not make, come under different rules for what EV charging they get. That is just wrong, especially when you have not been able to substantiate a problem and you have examples from cities who have allowed parking lifts or mandated parking lifts and encountered no problems. Finally, for your future regulations, there are some things coming in the National Electric Code that I think California can react to. The National Electric Code is moving away from allowing people to self-install their own EVSE. California could go the other way. Second, there are provisions of the new electrical code that reduce the size of panels and breakers. California could early adopt those provisions into the code now and start saving money now. And finally, there is a coming provision in the National Electric Code related to GFCI that's undesirable for EV charging. California does not have to accept the entire model code. California could fail to accept those GFCI provisions and also send a message to the national code that those provisions are wrong and harming electrification. So on those three technical issues, I urge California to go its own way from the model code. Finally, low power level 2 is, and even level 1 is working great. I think you need a technical working group on ALMS provisions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Bryce, for your comment. Let's see, I have, is that making sure I got the right person here? And is that Dwight again?
And just note that you have
Oh,
two
no.
of the parking lift representatives who've shown up on the Zoom, if you can call
Oh.
on them when it comes their time.
Yeah. Sven, sorry, I got you mixed up there. Sven, the floor is yours there.
Okay, so this first set of comments addresses industry changes in the face of regulation, and what Christian Corby said, what Bryce said about new BYOC, we are in strong support of that. And right now, I don't see why, since you mentioned in the code J1772 and J3400, you could just not add that SAE standard for the BYOC cable. What's important here, just like the Siemens device, which is a dual breaker metering device for apartments and condos in face of this direct wiring, a new company called It's Electric is modeled on European BYOC charging EVSEs has come about. Simultaneously, when we talk about direct wiring, there's a third company now, EV Plugbox. I'll admit, Bryce and I have started, patent pending, that does direct wiring, and you're able to move it around from parking space A to unit 1, from parking space A to unit 2, without having an electrician do it. It's something that it's essentially unplugging something and then plugging it back into a different socket. So in face of regulations, technology has advanced and changed, and new industries are being built. So this applies to those parking lifts as well. So my comments here are on the socket outlet cable. We haven't got, National Charging Access Coalition has not discussed this, but I'll wager 199% that we are in favor of adding to your list of what's allowable from an EVSE perspective, the J1772, J3400, and I didn't get that third SAE standard, which exists already on the BYOC side. And then on the parking lifts, again, you're allowing other industries to flourish while holding back all of these people that live in apartments and condos where there is parking lifts. So those are those comments, and I want to hear what you guys think right now about the BYOC. Bring your own charging cord, or bring your own cord. What you guys think about that? Because it would be an easy add just to be J7072, comma J30 or 3400, and just like it is right now in the code. So thoughts. And again, congratulations. Your regulations have spurred a new device from Siemens, a whole company called It's Electric, and a second company called EV Plugbox. So well done.
Perfect. Thank you for your comments there, Sven. And going through again, making sure to see if we had any other hands.
Because this is a discussion, I'm hoping for some discussion. What do you guys think? Have you heard of BYOC before?
Real quick, I can respond to that, Calvin. Thanks for the comments, Sven. When it comes to cord sets and those being provided and included in the charging of electric vehicles, there's other state agencies that have provisions regarding cord sets within their provisions outside of building standards. And so we would have to coordinate with other state agencies on discussions regarding cord sets who are not represented here today. such as the California Air Resources Board. So happy to gather this information. I've taken personally 2.5 pages of notes today, and appreciate this information and dialogue, and we'll certainly circle back internally and with other state agencies where necessary to discuss cord sets. So thank you.
Okay. Mike from the CEC, what do you think?
Yeah, since it was KSP charging was approved, I guess, by the J3068 committee. Yeah, we're looking into its adoption. I mean, it's not a uncommon thing, or actually, it's the common way to do it in Europe. And so there's a lot of potential upside. So yeah, I wouldn't say we have an official position, but I think it looks promising, especially as we're transitioning to NACS. You have J3400 car, or sorry, yeah, J3400 cars, J7072 cars, and you just bring your own cord set. And as far as in code, you know, the application we're looking at is mostly curbside, but yeah, you know, for apartments, it seems like it could have a role, but we're still looking into it. But I think you know, it does make sense for a lot of situations for all the reasons that you brought up.
That's what we want to hear, is a discussion. And if anybody has a negative about it, I would want to hear that too. So thank you. This is a discussion. I mean, we're all technologists here.
Yeah, the only negative is you know, people don't like having extra cord in their car. They just want to drive up and plug in, but you know, with that comes vandalism and you know, incompatibilities, and you know, what's the difference between having an adapter versus a cord in your car? But yeah, I think that the downside is just people aren't used to it, and I've heard a lot of skepticism about people carrying their own cord.
I don't seem to be able to raise my hand, but I do have a comment at the appropriate time.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, there's a few other individuals that have their hand raised right now, but HCD has, in line. We'll preserve your name.
Yes, Mike, I'll make sure I get to you here. I'm going to go ahead make a quick announcement just to make sure, just so everyone's aware, this is the final item. So if you do have, you know, questions or concerns, please make sure you get your hand raised there. Mike, I do have you on there, so I'm going to go ahead and making sure we go ahead and continue the conversation. But Grant, looks like you were next up there if you're ready.
Yeah, just wanted to make a quick comment in regards to BYOC. One of the negatives, like having having to have the cable in the car, is definitely true. And there's also the possibility that, you know, you roll up to a charger and you're like, what do I do here? But hopefully that would be ameliorated the first time you do that. You can easily find how you charge with a BYOC cable. And, you know, the upside is that you can have a cute matching cable to go with your car if that's something that you're interested in. So definitely a bonus there. And Mitchell, I just wanted to ask about, you said that CARB is one of the organizations that regulates cord sets. I was wondering if you know if there's any other ones that we could coordinate with, if that's a possibility.
CARB would be the main, and it's cord sets for the sale of new vehicles. I'm not sure what the provisions look like today, but there are provisions, or have been in the past, that require certain cord sets in the sale of new vehicles.
Yeah,
they would have to find on their provisions, but they're the only ones I'm aware of.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the convenience cord definitely is a possibility of what we were looking at to try and see if BYOC was a possibility, but level 2 versus level 1, the automakers probably don't want to pay for the extra cost of a level 2 capable cable. Thanks.
Yeah. BYOC, of course, has both cables on each end. So it's both J3400 and the BYOC end. So it's kind of unclear whether the current regulations allow it or not.
I don't think there's anything precluding it. If you have the BYOC cable plug into you know, the signal box, for lack of a better term, and then that would enable you to plug into either 120 or 240 or 208 volts. So the requirement is for level 2 and level 1 capable convenience cords to come with the car. But how you implement that, I don't think it's precluded to have a all-in-one.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Grant, for your comment. And Dwight, looks like you're next there if you're ready.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, I want to reiterate something that Bryce has brought up today, but he has brought up in past workshops, and that is what happens when charging stations are installed in locations where the proprietor does not consider themselves responsible for maintenance of those charging stations. I have stayed at a hotel in Bakersfield, the same hotel over the years, that does not feel it's their responsibility to maintain the EVSE that they install. And it's kind of a mess. And the question is, how do we address this with regards to the requirement, the 25% requirement coming up in our new code? And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be wise to establish some kind of a working group that's a monitoring group that provides input to HCD on examples of problems that are occurring out there as we move forward. We need to move forward, no question about it. The 40% EV ready circuits, with a receptacle is great. What I worry about is unattended to charging stations that actually give a black eye to the EV charging industry. I know there could be private companies that pop up and go to hotels and say, hey, I'll maintain these for you if you want. I'll stop by every week and I'll make sure the cord sets aren't laying all over the ground, or I'll do that at CVS or one of the pharmacies. But I think it would be probably wise to have some type of more formalized input for y'all to be able to kind of observe what's happening out there as we move forward. Because I have that same concern that Bryce has raised. I think that's my main comment here. Although the switch over from amps and volts to kilowatts, I think probably could use some more discussion also to better understand the basis for this. I think in some cases, use case analysis would probably help the group discussion move forward. Identifying different use cases where this may be where a certain step would be an advantage or not an advantage. And I think sharing use cases ahead of time, like in advance of these types of focus groups, would be great. Or being able to share as much as you can ahead of time so that we all can see the use cases and understand the basis for the discussion. I think that would be really helpful. That's it for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dwight, for your comment. And I've gone through just making sure before I move to you, Sven, I wanted to give Michael a chance to speak there since I know he was waiting patiently.
Is that me?
Yes, Mike, that's you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, so I apologize. I just kind of jumped into this. I haven't heard everything that's going on here, but I just wanted to make a comment. We have been installing automated parking systems here in California, primarily in multifamily buildings since 1988, and we're approaching about 10,000 stalls. We have many of those stalls that have EVSE equipment in them and are charging electric vehicles. We've learned a lot over that time. And basically the way they work is that they are on a pedestal just as they would be if it was on a surface stall. The pedestal is mounted on the stall inside the automated system. So the cable from the EVSE to the car is identical to what you would have in a surface stall. The only difference really between that charging and charging on a surface stall is getting power from the stationary wall to the moving platform, which is done through an energy chain, which protects the cables. This is the same that's used in, standard robotics systems. And we really haven't seen any safety issues that are related to the combination of EVSE equipment with automated parking systems. There's always issues, but those issues seem to us to be the same as the ones in a surface stall. But anyway, we have quite a few of these, and I just wanted to, offer if anyone has any questions about how they work, or if they have any particular concerns that we could address, we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. We definitely appreciate you participating here today. I do have a question or maybe an opportunity to illuminate the conditions with the parking lifts. I don't know if you're a manufacturer or an installer, but I heard you say install over 10,000 parking lifts or spaces in parking lifts. In the scenario where EV charging is provided, can you kind of describe how a user, and I'm mainly referring to mechanical parking lifts that move, that may elevate, how an individual would park, the location of the EV charger, how the individual would connect their cord and use a screen or other systems to begin charging and pay or whatever is required. Can you kind of describe the user experience and how they kind of traverse around the lift to do these things in order to charge their vehicles?
Yes, thank you, Mitchell. I'd be happy to. So again, it's just like it is on a surface stall. There's another difference in that, unlike shared spaces that you may be parking any size vehicle and that kind of thing, and you kind of needed to accommodate all comers, the spaces in the lion's share of our systems are in what's called puzzle systems. So the spaces do move in a fairly complex way, although it's less complex than people think, because the stalls really only move one space back and forth, either up and down or sideways. So when the user is parking their vehicle or retrieving their vehicle, they're walking in onto their space where their car is. It's on the ground just like a surface stall. Again, the pedestal mounted system is typically towards the front of their vehicle. So they're walking past their driver's door. They're walking up to the system and they're grabbing the connector and then plugging it into their car just like they would normally. The EVSEs may or may not have, they may have commercial capabilities such as dynamic allocation or being able to charge the user. But there are certainly places where they use the inexpensive EVSEs and perhaps they run them through their own little PG&E meters to monitor, and there is no screen. But in the cases where there is a screen and they can take a credit card and they can, the charging company, we don't sell the chargers ourselves. The charging company can then charge that individual user for their usage and send that money back to the HOA or the building management to pay the bill. So it basically operates exactly the same way as if it's in a surface stall. It's just inside a system. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and so if a consumer is pulling into a parking spot, their vehicle may range in size, and so they're placing their vehicle on this parking lift. They potentially charge their vehicle, connect a cord set to their vehicle, navigate to some sort of display in some cases, and then the parking lift is elevated or moved, and you said in kind of one space distance to wherever it's sitting until the user comes back. Are they doing all of that before the lift is moved? Is it in a grade location whenever they're using that lift?
Yeah, and in a puzzle system, and I'd be happy to take you and show you one of these systems, but in a puzzle system, the system never moves when a person is in or near their car. These systems have doors, and when you enter or exit the system and you're accessing your vehicle, the system is locked out from movement. Once you have either arrived and plugged your car in or come in to get your vehicle to unplug it and then back out, during that process, the system never moves. After you close the door or before you open the door, that's when the system moves the platforms into their position. So the system is never moving with a person present.
Fantastic. And are these systems, this two-part question, are these parking lifts at least 9 feet in width and 18 feet in length? And then the
Absolutely
second,
not.
okay.
So
And
one
then
of the advantages of having an automated system is that you can build it so that some stalls are larger than other stalls. They're only used typically by an assigned single user. So those users are assigned to stalls that fit their vehicles. And that way, if they have a smaller car, they can be assigned to a smaller space. This is important because this saves money so that we can build more housing units for people. And it also saves environmental emissions, right? You're putting, when you're trying to optimize the space for all these cars, you're building in a way that's very optimized and you're using less concrete and less sprawling area and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to it.
yeah, thank you for that. The second part of that is, are there models that you're aware of parking lifts that provide an additional 8-foot aisle to provide access?
Where would that aisle be located?
On either side of the parking space.
Such as an ADA walking aisle, that kind of thing?
So there are accessibility provisions that may apply to parking spaces. This is a provision, a prescriptive requirement that 1 in every 25 EVCS spaces are provided with an 8-foot aisle. There's an exception, and it can reduce down to 5, but there's an 8-foot standard requirement. Do lifts that you've installed, the 10,000 in California, do any of those provide that aisle width?
They do not. So let me just give you a little bit of background for that. So automated parking systems in general, not completely, there's lots of different types, but in general, we're talking about puzzle systems or similar systems to that. These systems do not allow ADA parking. ADA parking is separate from those systems. And additionally, these are level 2 chargers. So they're basically like a destination charger. You arrive home at night, you plug in your car, it's plugged in all night. It takes hours to charge. It's not something that's shared. So the users that are accessing their vehicles and the chargers are not, they're not ADA spaces.
Thank you.
I wanted to make sure we had nothing further there. So, Mike, thank you for the clarification there. And going through the list, I do have 3 hands that are currently raised. Looks like Sven, looks like I have you up next here.
This parking lift discussion is really important. Because I have a question. I'm going to continue it, and that's where I'm going to stay right now because I have a question too, because this is supposed to be a discussion. On the parking lift side, you do your ADA parking spaces separately on the ground level somewhere else. Is that my understanding? Sometimes I can see somebody who's on screen nodding yes, waving his hands. I want to hear about that because these 8-foot aisles and 5-foot aisles that Mitchell is referring to is my understanding for ADA charging. And I'm concerned about the size widths for requirements for EVSC, Mitchell. And again, I'm not the code expert. Are you implying that if a single family house is built that includes an EVSC or a multifamily home is built that includes like one of the direct wirings, those parking spaces have to be 9-foot wide by 18-foot long? Or can they be just the normal and would someone please tell me what the smaller normal sized parking space is? Because I think we're holding some standards. We've got one set of goal, which is to get people charged, and we're pushing everything against charging lifts or lifts and parking. Could someone please help me understand this?
Yeah, briefly, and I know we have some other folks that probably want to chime in. So there are technical provisions in CALGreen. What we're discussing today is not intended to broach accessibility provisions. That would include Chapter 11B or accessibility for public accommodations or housing accessibility under Chapter 11A. Those are separate and distinct requirements where accessibility provisions may apply to parking spaces, especially facilities or services that are provided at any given newly constructed multifamily hotel or motel. Separately from that, we're talking about technical provisions in CALGreen, and there are requirements for EVCS spaces when those are provided to have minimum lengths and widths and a ratio requirement of 1 of every 25 is provided with an aisle. So that's separate and distinct from accessibility provisions.
Okay, so quick question. Okay, so for EVSE, so if a builder at a multifamily home decides, oh, I got a sweet deal on a bunch of Chinese EV chargers. Rather than putting in receptacles for the direct wiring, I'm going to put in EV chargers. So you're saying that they have to then upgrade their parking spaces to something bigger than if they just put in a receptacle?
When EVCS is provided, this section would be triggered. Correct.
So the answer is, so if you put in but if I'm the tenant or the resident and I see a receptacle, I can plug that charger in. Does that mean I'm then out of compliance?
I'm not following you exactly. So when a newly developed multifamily project, hotel or motel is designed, and there's EVCS being provided, that would trigger the requirements of the dimension and location for EVCS spaces.
But if they just put in a receptacle, that would not trigger those parking size requirements, even though we know the intent of the receptacle is for EV charging. We got a logic problem here. And someone's trying to raise their hand, and DeLoco.
Sure. Dave Lococo with Watry Design. We're a parking design firm, architects and engineers, and we've been dealing with mechanical, automated parking and just traditional general parking. And the code specifies 9x18 for residential EVCS, not on the commercial or retail side of parking. So a stall with a charger in a commercial setting does not have the same criteria that it is in the residential side. We feel, and we've not been able to find anybody to give us an answer around it, we feel that 9x18 stall size that got attached to the EVCS in residential was there prior to the ADA being part of this analysis of EV. And so we think it's sort of a holdover that they were trying to protect the ADA that wasn't being provided with EV, and that may have been misconnected or misguided. Because again, it's not required on any other aspect of parking design. So stall sizes, which every city has different stall sizes. So discussion around that is they're still compact and standard out there. There's something the industry calls unistall, which is more what Mike Klaus was talking about, which is a tinier, narrower stall that helps with the expansive waste of concrete and building area for every parking space. And again, cars have evolved over time. I sit on the National Parking Association's Parking Consultant Council, where we look at size of cars, change in size of cars over year. And we have a document that talks about the 85th percentile of cars. So there's a lot of back-end information and knowledge, and love to be able to come and help educate, share anytime anybody needs anything. Again, I can type in my name or pass along my information. Bryce is the one who invited me to try to join in, so I did. Again, I'm passionate about saving square footage, building efficiently, putting in EV. We do EV in fully automated, and we have ADA portals, entry exit areas that have the 8-foot or 5-foot side space, allow for full accessibility, and the user interacts with that space while parking their car. They exit again, like Mike said, a door closes before any movement of the vehicle is enacted. And those cars, we've now got a project in Menlo Park that has fully automated EV robotic. So the car gets moved to the electric charging spot and a robot arm plugs it in. And the user has an app with getting any of the information required necessary. Again, there's so much going on in these different types of mechanical puzzle parking, which is what Mike was talking about, or fully automated. And I'd love to, help any way I can, educate and give information about it, because designers are struggling with some of these interpretations and the change to all this EV criteria. And on top of what is CALGreen code, cities have the ability to then modify or add or increase. But we're seeing cities even, what our opinion is, maybe decrease CALGreen, but we're not clear on if the state is really thinking it's a decrease. So if you're allowed to do EVCS or EVSE, and this CALGreen has a minimum level threshold that you must do day one, and then you have the electrical outlet low power, we're seeing cities say we want 100% low power. And that's as good, in their opinion, in their minds, of exceeding CALGreen's standard. But when we don't see the EVSE units being put in, we think they're lessening CALGreen's code, and we think somebody should be talking to these cities that are changing their codes and not meeting the full implicit CALGreen criteria, and we can't get an answer. Who's right? Who's wrong? So architects are confused. They're calling us. We get some of them agreeing, some of them disagreeing. It's a real problem. And we're not sure where we can get a legitimate, correct answer that we could help pass on to everybody so that this is done right. Again, glad to help in any conversation I can.
Well, David, that really explains why I was confused as to why the stall size has anything to do with EV charging. So the fact that you're saying that it was tied up with ADA, that makes sense.
It was prior, Mike. Yeah, we think it began prior. It's a leftover. When you go back in the versions of the code, the 9x18 was enacted before the EV and before the ADA to all of it. And again, EV ADA came later in the game. And so we think this carryover, that stall size, is just a bit of that, but nobody's been able to answer us. And so
it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and again, we have cities that have criteria that they don't have a 9x18 stall in their code. And then you have to go talk to them about this code criteria for CALGreen that you need it. And then there's just developers are confused, owners are confused. It's a tough place right now. It's a little disconnected. And so love to try to help connect it.
And David, it's about to get even
Bryce,
more
really
complicated
quick,
because there's a federal law as of
Bryce, real quick, we have our time limit, and we're at that. But I wanted to address the comments from the last commenter. So if there are scenarios where local enforcing agencies are unsure how to apply the code, if there's confusion from design professionals, we have this email address, Title 24. That's what HCD is here for. We promulgate the residential mandatory measures and voluntary measures, and we respond to questions every day. We're happy to provide clarification. So if you have questions, or if a local enforcing agency is unclear, they're always welcome to send.
Hey, Mitchell, you muted right after you mentioned the Title 24 inbox.
Yeah, so send those questions to the Title 24 inbox. We're happy to coordinate with local enforcing agencies, design professionals, the general public, when there are questions about Title 24. Thank you.
Perfect. And I wanted to make sure I got the name right. Was it David? Yeah, thank you, David, for your comment there. It does look like I do have Bryce's hand up. And just as a quick reminder, if you do want to speak, please go ahead and use the raise hand function. That way we can go ahead and continue to get everyone their time there to speak on the topics that we are speaking at. So just a quick reminder, please utilize the hand function, the raise hand function, and we'll go ahead and keep things moving forward. Bryce, if you had a question or a concern.
As of September 2024, the Federal Access Board took final comments on federal ADA access rules. As such, all of these state level patches that were put in because there was no federal code seem like it's time to move past. It's much, much better for us to have a national code that's uniform, particularly for the mechanical parking industry, which the capital investment necessary to design one of those means that you're selling nationally or internationally. It's not just a one contractor California thing. You need to be under uniform standards, and now we'll have those. So I think it's time for this 9-foot rule and all of the ADA patches to go away from CALGreen. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Bryce. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Sorry, Calvin. Hopefully y'all can hear me. Just a real quick comment in relation to that. So the dimension and location requirements would not apply in scenarios where there are public accommodations being provided. The code is very explicit that if a project is a public accommodation and is required to comply with 11B, then the location and dimension requirements do not apply. I want to make that very clear. It's explicit in the code, it's written in the code. So this would apply to multifamily projects where EVCS is being provided at spaces. Again, the code is very explicit on the application of the dimension and location requirements. So, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mitchell. Looks like Linda, looks like you were able to join us back in here, and I want to go ahead and give you the floor there if you're ready. Nope.
Sorry there. I haven't been able to raise my hand. I'm on my mobile phone, so I would like to get in line.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and we can get you here there. Go ahead and jump on in. And want to make sure Linda looked like she had her hand raised and then disappeared. So Linda, if you're okay moving forward.
Yeah, actually, can you
Go ahead,
understand me?
Linda. Yeah, go ahead. There we go.
Okay, thanks. So again, this is Linda Hutchins-Knowles with the National Charging Access for All Coalition. I've just been thinking more about the parking lifts situation, and I wonder if the question could be shifted from whether yes or no to allow charging or to exempt or not exempt EV charging requirements on parking lifts. Could it be flipped to say, how can we ensure that residents who live in multifamily homes that have parking lifts get access to EV charging in a safe way, and use the brain power of this group and others to figure out how that can be done? I think that would be what would serve best the residents of California and help us meet our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals and serve equity. Given the fact that at least 80% of manufacturers of parking lifts do provide EV charging access, there doesn't seem to be a reason why this can't be done. So I really would invite you. I don't think it's, I know that your practice is usually that things are decided by this point already even, and you have an agenda you've established, but given the input that you've heard today from people who live in multifamily housing, from people who advocate for residents in multifamily housing, it seems like this is a really important thing to address. And I hope that you will be willing to do that. I hope you will listen to the parking vendors or the parking lift vendors who say they can do it. And let's figure out how we can get this done. Regarding the dimensions, I've seen videos of showing how it works. So cars drive onto this platform and then the people exit and then the cars are slid over. But if, that loading dock could be made with the dimensions required, it seems then that it doesn't matter that when the car is parked, because people don't walk up to their cars to park or to get in and out of their car. They only do that at the docking part. So let's see what can be possible. I hope you will try to make this happen for everybody. Thank you so much. That ends my comment.
Thank you for your comment there, Linda. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we get everyone that wants to speak. So, Aramis, if I got that correct, or if I'm saying that correctly, if you are willing to go ahead and speak, go ahead and you can unmute.
Sure. My name is Aramis. I'm a work for EV Charge for You. We're a California contractor, C10, specializing in EV charger installs. Wanted to comment on two items. Strongly urge California not to adopt the GFCI regulation for EV charging. It is a equity issue for a lot of folks who may not be able to update their electrical panel. We know how much that can cost folks to have to retrofit their home when they've already made a large purchase of buying an EV. Adding that extra layer can be really a hindrance and lower adoption overall. Also wanted to comment on the parking that we were just discussing. My company has installed approximately 3 to 4 installations we've done with Klaus lifts in San Francisco. They are a great option for folks who others have mentioned. It's an equity issue as well. Folks have mentioned that, people move into these properties and they have no control over the type of parking that they're allowed to, use. And making sure that folks have access is a big issue. And we just want to urge also to make sure that adoption of that is something that people can continue to use. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment there. And just checking again, and just another reminder, if you are dialing in, if you need to go ahead and speak, please go ahead and make sure to try to utilize that raised hand function. It does look like I have one last person on right now. Sven, if you had another comment there.
Yes, so I want two things. I'm going to bounce back to single family housing and the continued requirement of EV capable, and talk about how many single family housing units will be built this year, next year. Does HCD have a rough approximation of how many units will be built?
We don't have that data with us today, Sven.
Do you know how many were built last year?
Don't have that data with us today, no.
Okay, so it's roughly, I'll let you know. Is anybody here from CBIA? Bob Raymer, Chris Akoa? They'll tell you it's around 50,000 units. So to go from EV capable to EV ready in a single family dwelling, you have to hire an electrician or do it yourself. And the upcoming NEC code may make it really hard to do it yourself in the future, probably even illegal. So you call an electrician. How many people here have called an electrician and got a quote for less than $1,000? So to go from EV capable to EV ready, the quote's going to cost $1,000. And here where I live in Palo Alto land, the permitting fee could be between $500. So you're going to spend around $1,500 to $2,000 to convert that EV ready to convert that EV capable to EV ready. And there's 50,000 units. So we're spending at $2,000 a pop to go, because again, 2035, less than 10 years, all new cars are going to be electric. We're going to have to spend $100 million a year, where I'd be happy to take that $2,000 and pay extra taxes to a school teacher, because we have an $11.8 billion deficit, California does. So by going to EV ready, which just means a receptacle, we save $100 million a year, and a huge amount of hassle, inconvenience, and a barrier meaning just the effort. And so I don't understand why, and I want discussion, why we're still having this EV capable here when we've changed it everywhere else. Because it boggles my mind why you are putting this cost and effort barrier for the new single family home? So that's my discussion question right now.
And I can respond to that real quick. The provisions for EV capable that apply to 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses has been fairly long-standing since EV was originally conceived in the code. EV capable provides the flexibility to homeowners, and again, CALGreen is applicable generally to newly constructed 1 and 2 family and townhouses in this case. So we're not talking about existing buildings, but newly constructed homeowners, it provides the flexibility for those homeowners to install the conductor size and receptacles and breaker that would be necessary to charge their vehicle. In many scenarios, when you have a newly constructed single family dwelling townhouse, you may not have an individual that has an electric vehicle. They may not, prefer a certain size or capacity, and it may be a stranded resource if it's provided as a default. But providing a raceway and panel capacity to pull your conductors through, add a breaker and a receptacle or charger provides that flexibility to that homeowner to provide the necessary charging that they would need based upon their driving arrangement. So it's a flexibility thing for a homeowner. We're not talking about generally rented or leased units. These are single family dwellings or townhouses that are owned by individuals. They're not leased or rented, generally speaking. And so that's the EV capable provides that flexibility. And it's been a long-standing success for those that live in single-family dwellings and townhouses.
So Mitchell, I want to say again, thank you for all of the good work you guys have done on multifamily housing. But I'm going to push back on this because when you talk about flexibility, because you only provide 40 amp panel capacity for it, all you can do is go down. You can't go up to 60 amps, as a few Teslas accept, but nobody else, maybe some Porsches. But there's very few vehicles on the level 2 side that are above receiving 32 amps, which means 40 amp at the breaker, which is what the code requires from a panel capacity perspective. So it's not, the flexibility is actually not there, but that $100 million a year cost and aggravation and inconvenience and barrier to EV charging is there. So what we find in actual EV charging is that it's good enough. There's 1/3 of the people who have EVs just charge at level 1, 120 volt, 15 amp circuit. Level 1, it's good enough. The hassle factor of installing EVSE is that arduous and expensive. So having EV capable, saying it's flexible is, to me, is not true. It does a disservice. And to use language like it's long-standing likewise does a disservice. Technology changes. There are other codes changing, like the 2035. Every vehicle is going to have to be electric. In new sales in California, that's changing. So this using words like flexibility and longstanding, I think, do a disservice to the citizens of California who are going to have to pay that $1,000 to maybe $3,000 when they actually go to run the conductors and find that it's, their panels at one end of the house and the garage is at the other. It's going to cost $5,000. It doesn't make sense when the cost to run those conductors and install a simple receptacle is like, $100 more at most. So I'm sad. I want to say thank you for the work that you guys have done, but as an engineer, as a business owner, as a cost person who's trying to get everybody into as fast as possible into EVs, this particular code does it just like the parking lifts. This does a disservice to the citizens of California. Push back on me on the long-standing and the flexibility, please. If I'm wrong, I'm willing to accept that. But those are not. I'll be quiet.
Thank you for your comment there, Sven. Just for some housekeeping, we're going to go ahead and close out this item. We do have two hands that are raised. I'm going to go ahead and start with you first there, Bryce. And these are going to be final comments. So just keep that in mind. And then we'll move on to Dwight right after. Bryce?
Okay, great. Mitchell, if you could write down NEC 625.4. So this is a new NEC provision that'll come in the next edition of the model code that adds.
Hey, Bryce, real quick. I understand we've had conversations, you've sent emails on NEC. We're just talking about CALGreen, and I don't want to convolute things by discussing the California Electrical Code or provisions in the NEC that would be effective if HCD adopts them through the model code adoption process in the next triennial. I don't want to convolute those things. So if it has to do with the CALGreen proposal, if you can just focus on the CALGreen side and stay in that lane, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Absolutely. I do think that CALGreen could address this issue in a way by defining who is allowed to install EVSE in CALGreen. So I think there is a nexus there. Nonetheless, that's 625.4. And then I will support what Sven says about the cost of bringing out an electrician. In my world, I figure that it takes about $1,000 to go through the process of getting quotes, bids, and get a person out in order to turn a screw. It's that old joke about someone who goes in to have their car repaired and the mechanic says, oh, all I had to do was turn this screw. It's $100.01. And the homeowner asks, that's too much money for turning a screw. And the car mechanic says, well, it was 1 cent to turn the screw and $100 to know which screw to turn. That's exactly what it comes. There's just a minimum cost to getting an electrician out for anything. And you have to factor that into your calculations of long-term benefit versus long-term cost. I don't believe in putting stranded assets out there either, but I think that you have to understand there's a balance in eventual costs. And then finally, connecting EVSE to the width of parking spots, I think is an obsolete thing that California should be moving past. That's all for today. Thank you for offering this workshop. Good day.
All right, thank you, Bryce, there for your comments. And as I previously mentioned, we're going to go ahead, Dwight, you're going to go ahead and close us out there with this last comment then. So Dwight, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. I would also like to thank you very much for all the great work that the staff has done over the last decade or however long on the CALGreen code. It's just been fabulous. We've made huge steps, huge gains, and we should all congratulate you all for the hard work to get that done. I do think that this period of history that we're in could be analogized to when none of us had air conditioning in homes in 1950 or 1940s. And we went through that transition of no homes having air conditioning or just having wall air conditioners here or there to now every home has air conditioning. And the same thing with a dryer outlet. There was a time where we all hung our clothes on outside hangers, right? we dried our clothes outside. Now everybody's got a dryer outlet in their house. And I think we've reached that point in time where it's the same for EVs. It's time that every home come with a dedicated circuit for EV charging. 2035 is hardly any time at all in the future. And the analysis that Sven provided, supported by Bryce, that we're going to spend a ton of money on retrofits that could be avoided if we just do it as part of the upfront new construction timeframe. I think it would be so much more efficient to do it that way. So that's it. Just kind of like a historical overview that now's the time to move forward with this one. It's the right point in time, and I think Governor Newsom would be enthusiastic about that also. But thank you guys. Thank you all so much for all the work you've done and the entire group moving forward for the CALGreen. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dwight, for your comments there. And thank you, everyone, for making all your comments. I'm going to go ahead and turn everything back on over here to Tyler.
Yeah, thank you, Calvin, and everyone. Thank you for participating. Next slide, please. So thank you for participating in HCD's focus group meeting today. As Mitchell mentioned, our team has taken notes, and we appreciate all the feedback that was shared. I wanted to point out to the group that HCD had originally intended to have another focus group meeting in August to discuss a petition that was submitted to our agency. We made that announcement during the BSC, CEVW, and CCRC meeting. However, the petition has since then been withdrawn. Therefore, we will no longer be having that focus group meeting in August. We strongly encourage everyone to sign up to receive updates regarding HCD activities. Instructions for those who can see on the Zoom screen are there. Please go to www.hcd.ca.gov and click contact. Then you will go to the email sign up icon. Once you're there, you complete the form. And thank you, everyone. For questions, please send them to title24@hcd.ca.gov. The email is also found at the bottom of the screen. And this concludes our focus group meeting. Thank you, everyone. Mitchell, I don't know if you have any final comments to make.
Yeah, just thank everyone for participating. Please do use that email address, send us information. We do digest everything that comes in and take into account throughout the cycles. So please do send that in, and just want to reiterate, we're going to have a lot of changes as a result of AB 130, and when those things are communicated by the Building Standards Commission to proposing and adopting agencies, we'll react to those, and we'll take that into consideration with the proposals discussed today. But thanks again, everyone. Really appreciate the dialogue and look forward to the next one.